The throne room of the Empire was the largest room Sergeant Han had ever seen. It was bigger than any building on Earth. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to eat the light. Everything in this room was made to make visitors feel small and afraid. Han walked forward. His boots made soft sounds on the stone floor. Around him stood hundreds of alien nobles. They were tall, almost 8 feet each. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were large and silver. They looked at him the way a person might look at an insect. At the end of the long room sat the Empress. Her name was Vila, and she was only 24 years old. But in her short life, she had already conquered 12 star systems. She sat on a throne made of the bones of her enemies. Her long white hair fell past her shoulders. Her silver eyes watched Han with a mix of boredom and amusement. Han stopped walking. He was now 30 feet from the throne. This was as close as any outsider was allowed to get. He stood straight and kept his face calm. He was just a sergeant, a simple soldier. But today, he was the voice of Earth. The Empress leaned forward slightly. A small smile appeared on her lips. "So," she said, her voice echoed through the massive room. "This is what humans send to speak with me. A soldier, not a general, not a leader, just a common soldier." The nobles around the room began to laugh. The sound was not pleasant. It was sharp and cold. Han did not react. He had been told this might happen. They were known for their pride. They believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy. To them, humans were new and weak. Humans had only been in space for 200 years. They had ruled the stars for 10,000. "Your Majesty," Han said, his voice was steady. "I carry a message from Earth. We wish to discuss a trade agreement. We believe both our peoples can benefit from." "Benefit?" the Empress laughed. It was a beautiful sound, but there was no warmth in it. "What could humans possibly offer us? You are children, your bodies are soft, your lives are short. You break so easily." She waved her hand. A guard stepped forward. He was massive, even for a... He carried a weapon that looked like a long spear made of light. "My guard here could kill 100 of your soldiers before breakfast," the Empress said. "Your weapons are toys. Your ships are slow. Your technology is primitive. What benefit could we possibly get from you?" Han remained calm. Inside, he felt anger building, but he had trained for this. He had learned to control his emotions. A good soldier never let the enemy see his feelings. "We offer friendship," Han said simply, "and peaceful trade, nothing more." The Empress stood up from her throne. She was tall and thin, and she moved like water flowing down a hill. She walked toward Han slowly. The nobles went silent. They watched with hungry eyes. Vila stopped just a few feet from Han. She was much taller than him. She looked down at him with those silver eyes. Up close, Han could see that she was indeed young. Despite her power, there was something in her face that reminded him of a child who had never been told no. "Friendship," she repeated. She said the word like it tasted bad. "Humans always talk about friendship, about peace, about working together." She leaned closer. "Do you know what I think? I think you talk about peace because you are afraid of war. You are weak and you know it." Han said nothing. The Empress smiled wider. "See, you cannot even defend yourself with words. Pathetic." She reached out and touched his shoulder. Her fingers were cold even through his uniform. She squeezed slightly and Han felt pain, but he did not show it on his face. "So fragile," she whispered. "I could break your bones with one hand. Your kind is not fit to walk among the stars. You should have stayed on your little blue planet." She pushed him. Han took a step back but did not fall. The nobles laughed again. "Tell me, little soldier," the Empress said, returning to her throne. "Why should I not just take your Earth? Why should I not send my fleets to your home and make all humans my slaves? Give me one good reason." Han looked at her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, and his voice was quiet but clear. "Because, Your Majesty, that would be unwise." The room went silent. No one spoke to the Empress that way. The guards stepped forward, hands on their weapons, but Vila raised her hand and they stopped. "Unwise," she sounded amused. "Is that a threat, little human?" "No, your majesty, it is simply the truth. Humans do not make threats, we make promises and we keep them." The Empress stared at him. For just a moment something flickered in her eyes. It might have been surprise, it might have been curiosity, but then it was gone, replaced by cold amusement. "I have heard enough," she said. "Your request for trade is, go back to your people. Tell them that the Empire has no interest in weak species. Tell them to stay in their corner of the galaxy and be grateful we have not crushed them yet." Han nodded once. "I understand, your majesty." "And tell them," the Empress added, her voice sharp, "that if they send another pathetic messenger, I will not be so kind." Han bowed. It was a proper bow, respectful and correct. Then he turned and began to walk back toward the doors. The nobles watched him go. Some laughed. Some called out insults. One threw a small object that hit Han on the back. He did not turn around. He did not speed up. He did not slow down. He simply walked, one step after another, his back straight and his head high. Empress Vila watched him go. There was still a smile on her face. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she did not like to look, she felt something strange. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. The human had not begged. He had not cried. He had not become angry. He had simply accepted her decision and left. There was something in that calmness that bothered her. It was like watching a small animal walk away from a predator without running. It was unnatural. It was wrong. But she pushed the feeling away. She was the Empress of the. She had nothing to fear from humans. They were weak. Everyone knew that. She settled back into her throne and called for entertainment. Soon, she was laughing again, and the strange feeling was forgotten. Far below the throne room, Han stepped out into the cold air of the alien world. He took a deep breath. His shoulder still hurt where the Empress had grabbed him. He knew there would be a bruise later. He walked to his small shuttle and climbed inside. Only when the door closed behind him did he allow himself to feel. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger. He had known this mission would be difficult. He had known they were proud and cruel, but he had not expected such complete disrespect. They had not even listened. They had not even pretended to consider peace. Han sat in the pilot's seat and stared out at the alien city. It was beautiful in a cold way. Tall towers reached toward the purple sky. Ships flew between them like metal birds. Everything looked perfect and powerful. But Han knew something that did not. He knew that humans had faced worse odds before. He knew that humans had been mocked before, underestimated before, dismissed before. And he knew what happened to those who made that mistake. He started the shuttle's engines. The small ship rose into the sky. As he flew toward the stars, Han made a promise to himself. They would learn. One way or another, they would learn that humans were not to be dismissed. He just hoped, for everyone's sake, that the lesson would not be too painful. But deep in his heart, he knew it probably would be. The shuttle flew through the darkness between stars. Han sat alone in the small ship. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. He had plenty of time to think. He thought about the Empress. He thought about her silver eyes and her cold smile. He thought about the way she had touched his shoulder, like he was a toy she might break. He thought about the laughter of the nobles, sharp and cruel. Most of all, he thought about what he would tell his commanders. Han was not an important man. He was 32 years old. He had joined the military at 18. He had fought in small conflicts on distant moons. He had never done anything special. He was just a soldier who followed orders. But now he carried something important. He carried information. During his time on the, he had watched everything. He had counted guards. He had noticed the positions of weapons. He had observed how the aliens moved and spoke. He had listened to every word, even the ones not meant for him. The thought he was just a stupid human. They had spoken freely in front of him, believing he could not understand their language. But Han had spent 2 years learning before this mission. He had understood every insult, every joke, every casual comment. And he had learned things, important things. He learned that the empire was not as strong as it appeared. Their economy was struggling. Their outer colonies were unhappy. Several noble families were secretly planning rebellion. The Empress was powerful, but she was also young and inexperienced. Many of her advisors did not respect her. Han wrote everything down. He filled page after page with notes. He drew maps from memory. He listed names and relationships. By the time he was finished, he had created a complete picture of the empire and all its weaknesses. Back on the Empress, Vila was having dinner with her closest advisors. The meal was served on golden plates. The food was the finest in the empire, but Vila found that she had no appetite. Lady sat across from her, was old for a nearly 300 years. She had served Vila's mother and grandmother before that. Her face was lined with age and her silver eyes had faded to gray, but her mind was still sharp. "You seem troubled, Your Majesty," said. "Is something wrong?" Vila picked at her food with a silver fork. "Nothing is wrong. I am simply tired." "The human upset you." Vila looked up sharply. "The human did not upset me. He was nothing, a small, weak creature. I have already forgotten him." Smiled slightly. It was the kind of smile old people use when they know something you do not. "If you had forgotten him, you would not be so angry now." "I am not angry." "You are stabbing your food like it insulted your ancestors." Vila looked down. Her fork was indeed buried deep in a piece of meat. She pulled it out and set it aside. "Fine," she said. "Perhaps I am somewhat irritated, but not because of the human, because of what he represents." "And what is that?" Vila leaned back in her chair. "The humans are spreading. Every year they claim more systems. They build more ships. They grow stronger. And yet they come here and talk about peace and friendship as if we should believe them." "Perhaps they genuinely want peace," suggested. "No one genuinely wants peace. Peace is what the weak ask for when they cannot win a war. The humans know they cannot defeat us, so they ask for trade agreements and alliances. But the moment they become strong enough, they will attack. That is how it has always been. That is how it will always be." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The humans are different from other species we have encountered." "Different how?" "They are patient. They plan for the long future. A human life is short, only about 100 years. But they do not think only of themselves. They think of their children and their children's children. They build things that will last beyond their own lives." Vila laughed. "That sounds like weakness to me. Why care about a future you will never see?" "Because," said slowly, "it means they are willing to wait. They are willing to lose today if it means winning tomorrow. That makes them dangerous." "Dangerous?" Vila shook her head. "They are soft and fragile. I could break one with my bare hands." "You could break one, yes, but could you break all of them? Humans do not fight alone. They fight together. They share knowledge and resources. When one human learns something, all humans learn it. When one human is hurt, all humans feel anger." Vila waved her hand. "You worry too much, old friend. The humans are no threat to us. They know their place." "Do they?" Looked at her with those faded gray eyes. That soldier today. He did not look like someone who knew his place. He looked like someone who was remembering something. "Remembering what?" "Every word you said, every face in that room, every guard and every weapon. I watched him, Your Majesty. His eyes never stopped moving. He was gathering information." Vila felt a small chill run down her spine, but she pushed it away. "Let him gather information. What will he do with it? The humans cannot hurt us. Our fleet is 10 times the size of theirs. Our weapons are more advanced. Our soldiers are stronger. Even if they learned every secret we have, they could not defeat us." Nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right, but I would advise caution. Send someone to watch the humans, learn what they are doing. Knowledge is power, Your Majesty. I know that better than anyone. Vila picked up her fork again. Fine, I will send some observers, but only to prove that you are worrying about nothing. Far away, Han's shuttle continued its journey through the stars. He had finished his notes and was now sleeping in the small bed at the back of the ship. His sleep was not peaceful. He dreamed of silver eyes and cold laughter. When he woke, he checked his messages. There was one from Earth. It was from General Min, his commanding officer. Sergeant Han, the message said, we have received your preliminary report. Well done. The Council is very interested in your findings. When you return, you will brief them directly. Prepare a full presentation. Han read the message twice. Brief the Council directly. The Council was the highest governing body on Earth. They made all the important decisions about humanity's future. For a simple sergeant to speak to them was almost unheard of. But then again, this was not a normal situation. Humanity had sent dozens of ambassadors to various alien empires. Most had been ignored. Some had been killed. Han was one of the few who had actually met with a ruler and returned alive. He began preparing his presentation. He organized his notes into clear sections. He drew diagrams and charts. He practiced speaking clearly and simply. He wanted the Council to understand everything he had learned. As he worked, he thought about what he would recommend. They were dangerous. They were arrogant and cruel. They believed they had the right to rule the galaxy, and they treated other species like insects. But they also had weaknesses. Their empire was stretched thin. Their leadership was young and inexperienced. Their people were not united. Han believed that humanity should avoid war if possible. War was terrible. Millions would die. But he also believed that humanity should be ready. If they attacked, humans needed to be prepared. He wrote his recommendations carefully. Build more ships, train more soldiers, make alliances with other species who feared the strengthen trade routes, prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. By the time his shuttle entered Earth's solar system, Han had completed his presentation. He was tired but satisfied. He had done his job. He had gathered the information his people needed. The shuttle landed at a military base in Korea. Han stepped out into the warm sunshine. He took a deep breath of Earth air. It smelled like home. General was waiting for him. She was a small woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been a soldier for 50 years. She had seen more battles than Han could count. Sergeant Han, she said, welcome home. Han saluted. Thank you, General. How was your trip? Han thought about the cold throne room, the silver eyes, the cruel laughter, the pain in his shoulder. Educational, he said finally. General smiled. It was a hard smile, the smile of someone who understood. Good, she said. The Council meets tomorrow. Rest tonight. You will need your strength. Han nodded and walked toward the base. Behind him, his shuttle sat quiet and still. Inside were the notes that would change humanity's future. The thought they had sent away a weak, frightened messenger. They were wrong. They had created an enemy who remembered everything. The council chamber was located deep underground beneath the city of Seoul. It was a large room with a round table in the center. 12 chairs surrounded the table, each one holding a leader of Earth's government. Han stood at the edge of the room, waiting to be called. He had not slept well the night before. His dreams had been filled with images of war, ships burning in space, cities on fire, millions of people crying out in pain. He hoped it was just a dream and not a vision of the future. Sergeant Han, a voice called, "Please step forward." Han walked to the center of the room. He stood straight and kept his hands at his sides. The 12 council members looked at him with serious eyes. The council leader was a woman named Park. She was 60 years old, with white hair and a calm face. She had been a diplomat before becoming a leader. She believed in peace above all things. "Sergeant Han," she said, "thank you for coming. We have read your preliminary report. It is very detailed." "Thank you, Council Leader. We have questions. First, tell us your overall impression of the Empire." Han took a deep breath. "They are powerful, but they are not as strong as they believe. Their empire is large, but it is also old. Many of their systems are unhappy. Their economy depends on conquest, but they have not conquered new territory in decades. They are living on past glory." "And the Empress?" "Young, arrogant, cruel," Han paused, "but also uncertain. She hides it well, but I saw doubt in her eyes. She knows her empire has problems. She just does not know how to fix them." One of the other council members spoke. His name was Lee, and he was in charge of military matters. He was a large man with a face and cold eyes. "You recommend that we build more ships and train more soldiers," he said. "Why? You also say they are weak." "They are weak for now," Han replied. "But they are still stronger than us. If they attack tomorrow, we would lose. My recommendations are about making sure they never attack at all." "How would building weapons prevent an attack?" "Because they only respect strength. They attacked other species because those species could not fight back. If we show them that an attack on Earth would cost them greatly, they will think twice." Council Leader Park raised her hand. "This is a dangerous path, Sergeant. If we build weapons, they might see it as a threat. They might attack before we become too strong." "With respect, Council Leader, they already see us as a threat. Not because of what we are, but because of what we might become. The Empress called us weak, but she also seemed afraid. She knows that humans grow quickly. She knows that in 100 years we might be stronger than her empire. That fear might push her to attack anyway." "Then what is the solution?" Han was quiet for a moment. "I do not know if there is a perfect solution, but I believe we should prepare for war while looking for peace. Build our strength, but also find allies. There are other species who fear the. If we stand together, we might be too strong for the Empress to attack." The council discussed for hours. They asked Han many questions about what he had seen and heard. He answered as honestly as he could. When he was finished, they thanked him and sent him away. Han did not know what decision they would make. He could only hope they would listen. Back on the, Lady had sent observers to watch the humans. The observers were spies, trained to gather information without being noticed. They traveled to human space and began their work. What they found surprised them. The humans were not sitting quietly. They were building. Shipyards worked day and night. Factories produced weapons and armor. Training camps turned civilians into soldiers. The humans were preparing for war. The observers sent their reports back to the. Lady read every word. When she was finished, she went to see the Empress. Vila was in her private garden, surrounded by flowers that glowed in the darkness. She was playing a game with small stones, moving them across a board in patterns only she understood. She did not look up when entered. "The human report has arrived," said. "I assumed so. You look worried." "I am worried," sat down across from the Empress. "The humans are building a fleet, a large one. In 3 years they will have enough ships to challenge our outer systems." Vila moved a stone on her board. 3 years, that is nothing. Let them build their little ships. They are still using technology from a century ago. "Their technology is improving. They learn fast, Your Majesty, faster than any species we have seen." "Learning is not the same as knowing. It will take them 1,000 years to match our science." Shook her head. "I'm not so sure. Do you remember they said the same thing about us once. Now they are slaves in our minds." Vila finally looked up. Her silver eyes were cold. "Are you comparing me to they were weak? They grew comfortable and stopped advancing. I am not them." "I am not comparing you, Your Majesty. I am warning you. The humans sent that soldier to our court. We mocked him and sent him away. Now he is advising their council. He told them everything he saw here. He told them about our weaknesses. We have no weaknesses. Every empire has weaknesses. Ours include the outer colonies that demand independence, the noble families that plot against each other, the trade routes that are stretched too thin. The humans know about all of this now. Vila stood up and walked to the edge of her garden. She looked out at the dark sky. What would you have me do? Apologize to the humans? Beg for their forgiveness? Of course not, but perhaps we should reconsider the trade agreement they offered, bring them closer, make them our friends rather than our enemies. Friends, Vila laughed. The do not have friends, we have subjects and enemies. The humans will be one or the other, they cannot be both. Then make them subjects peacefully, trade with them, share some technology, let them become dependent on us. That way, when we eventually move against them, they will not be able to resist. Vila was quiet for a long moment, then she shook her head. No, that is too slow. The humans are growing too fast. Every year we wait, they become stronger. We cannot give them more time. Then what is your plan? Vila turned back to face her old advisor. There was something new in her eyes, something hard and cold. I am going to crush them. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon, before they become a real threat. I will send our fleets to their border. I will show them what true power looks like. And when they are too afraid to move, I will offer them a choice. Submit or die. Felt a chill run through her old bones. Your Majesty, I strongly advise against this. War with the humans will cost us greatly. They may be weak, but they are many, and they fight with a desperation that other species do not have. Desperation is the weapon of the losing side. Sometimes, but sometimes it is the weapon that turns defeat into victory. The humans have a saying, a cornered animal is the most dangerous. If we push them too hard, they might do something unexpected. Vila waved her hand. You worry too much. The humans are not animals, they are soft. They value their lives too much. When they see our fleet, they will surrender. I am sure of it. And if they do not, then I will destroy them. Vila's voice was calm, as if she was discussing the weather. Every ship, every colony, every man, woman, and child. I will burn their worlds and scatter their ashes across the stars. They will become a warning to every other species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you challenge the... Looked at the young Empress. She remembered when Vila was a child, running through these same gardens. She had been kind once and curious and full of wonder. Now she was something else, something dangerous. I hope you know what you are doing, Your Majesty. I always know what I am doing. Vila returned to her game board. Now leave me. I have plans to make. Bowed and left the garden. As she walked through the dark hallways of the palace, she thought about the future. She saw blood and fire. She saw empires falling. She saw things that made her old heart ache. She had served 3 generations of rulers. She had seen wars begin and end. She had watched species rise and fall. And in all that time, she had learned one truth above all others. Pride comes before the fall. The Empress believed she was invincible. She believed her empire would last forever. She believed that humans were weak and harmless. But had seen the eyes of that human soldier. She had seen the calm determination in his face. She had seen how he watched and listened and remembered. Humans were not weak, they were patient. And patience in the long run was stronger than any weapon. Went to her private room and began writing a letter. She did not know if it would help, but she had to try. She addressed it to no one in particular and sealed it with her personal mark. If things went wrong, this letter might be the only thing that survived. She hid it carefully and went asleep, but like Han, her dreams were full of fire. 3 months passed like water through fingers. On Earth, the Council had listened to Han's advice. Ships were built, soldiers were trained, but more importantly, ambassadors were sent to every corner of the galaxy. The humans did not beg for help. They did not cry about the threat they faced. Instead, They simply told the truth. They shared what Han had learned about the Empire. They showed other species the weaknesses that they had hidden for centuries. And one by one, the victims of the began to listen. The first to respond were they were a small species, green-skinned and peaceful. They had conquered their 200 years ago and forced them to work in factories. But some had escaped and built hidden colonies on distant moons. They remembered what freedom felt like, and they wanted it back. The second were they were large and strong with gray skin and 4 arms. Once they had been warriors who challenged they had lost, and now they served as slaves in the mines. But they had not forgotten how to fight. The third were they were beautiful creatures, tall and slender, with skin like silver and voices like music. They had been allies of the once, trading knowledge and art. But they had betrayed them, stealing their technology and destroying their fleet. Now they wanted revenge. There were others too. Dozens of species, large and small, weak and strong. All of them had suffered under all of them had waited for a chance to strike back. And now, thanks to the humans, that chance had come. Han traveled with the diplomats. He spoke to leaders and generals. He showed them his notes and his maps. He answered their questions with patience and honesty. He did not promise victory. He only promised that if they stood together, they would have a chance. By the time 3 months had passed, humanity had built something the galaxy had never seen before. An alliance of the oppressed, a union of the forgotten, an army of species who had nothing in common except their hatred of the Empress Vila finally realized something was wrong. It started with the trade routes. Ships that should have arrived did not. Messages that should have been answered went silent. The flow of goods and information that kept the empire alive began to slow. Then came the reports from the outer colonies. Rebellions were breaking out everywhere. Slaves were rising against their masters. Factories were burning. Mines were abandoned. The systems that had been quiet for centuries were suddenly filled with chaos. Vila summoned her generals to the throne room. They stood before her with worried faces. "What is happening?" she demanded. "Why are my colonies falling apart?" General Koraz was the highest-ranking military officer in the empire. He was old and experienced, with scars on his face from 100 battles. He had served Vila's grandfather and father before her. He had never failed them. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "we are being attacked on all fronts." "Attacked by whom?" "By everyone." Koraz pulled up a holographic map of the empire. Red dots covered it like a disease. "They have destroyed our factories in the outer rim. They have freed the slaves in the mining systems. They have blocked our trade routes in the eastern sector. And the humans." "The humans?" Vila leaned forward. "What have the humans done?" "They have united them all. Every species that hates us is now working together. They share information. They share weapons. They coordinate their attacks. It is like nothing we have ever seen." Vila felt cold. She remembered the human soldier who had stood in this very room 3 months ago. She remembered how calm he had been, how quiet, how he had simply bowed and walked away while she laughed at him. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "The humans are weak, they have nothing." "They have something more valuable than weapons, Your Majesty." It was Lady who spoke. She had entered the room quietly and now stood in the shadows. "They have friends." Vila turned to face her old advisor. "Friends? This is about friends." "Yes. While you were mocking them and planning to destroy them, they were making alliances. They went to every species you had hurt and offered them hope. They asked nothing in return except cooperation against a common enemy." "That is ridiculous. The other species hate each other. They would never work together." "They hate each other less than they hate us." Walked forward until she stood beside General Koraz. "The humans understood something we never did. They understood that the galaxy is larger than any one empire. They understood that the oppressed will always find each other eventually. They simply helped that process along." Vila stood up from her throne. Her silver eyes were blazing with anger. "Then we will crush them all. Send every ship we have, destroy the rebels, burn their worlds, show them what happens when they challenge the—" General Koraz shook his head. "Your Majesty, our fleet is powerful, but it cannot be everywhere at once. If we concentrate on one region, the others will attack our undefended systems. We would be fighting a war on 100 fronts. Then we will fight a war on 100 fronts. We would lose." The word hung in the air like a cold wind. No one had ever said that word to the Empress before. They did not lose. They had never lost. "Explain," Vila said through clenched teeth. Koraz pointed at the map. "Our fleet is 10 times larger than the human fleet, but the combined fleet of all our enemies is 3 times larger than ours. They have more ships, more soldiers, more resources, and they have something else we do not have." "What?" "Motivation. Our soldiers fight because they are ordered to. Their soldiers fight because they believe in their cause. That makes a difference in battle." Vila stared at the map, red dots everywhere. Her empire, the greatest empire in galactic history, was surrounded by enemies on all sides. 3 months ago, she had been the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. Now she was trapped. "What do you recommend?" she asked quietly. "Negotiation," Koraz said. "We need to end this war before it truly begins. Offer the rebels some of what they want. Independence for some colonies. Better treatment for others. It will cost us, but it will save the empire." "Surrender?" Vila's voice was cold. "You want me to surrender to slaves and insects?" "I want you to survive, Your Majesty. The empire can rebuild from loss. It cannot rebuild from destruction." Vila turned away from them. She walked to the window and looked out at her city. The towers still reached toward the sky. The ships still flew between them. Everything looked normal. But she knew that beyond the horizon, fires were burning. "I will not surrender," she said. "I will not bow to humans and their collection of broken species. I am the Empress of the— My ancestors conquered the stars. I will not be the one who loses them." "Your Majesty." "Leave me, all of you, I need to think." The generals and advisors left the room. Only remained. She stood by the door, her faded gray eyes watching the young Empress with something like sadness. "I warned you," said softly. "I told you the humans were different." Vila did not turn around. "Yes, you did. It is not too late. You can still save your empire, but only if you act quickly. How you heard Koraz, we cannot win this war. You cannot win this war alone, but perhaps you do not have to fight it alone." Walked closer. "The humans want peace. They have always wanted peace. That soldier you mocked, he came here to offer friendship, not war. If you reach out to them now, they might still accept." Vila finally turned. Her face was pale and her silver eyes were tired. For the first time, she looked like what she was, a young woman carrying a weight too heavy for anyone. "Why would they accept? I insulted them. I threatened to destroy them. I called them weak and pathetic. Because humans are strange creatures. They value mercy. They believe in second chances. They are not like us, Your Majesty. They do not hold onto hatred forever." "How do you know this?" Smiled, it was a sad smile. "Because I have been studying them for 3 months. Since the day that soldier walked out of this room, I knew something had changed. I wanted to understand what." "And what did you learn?" "I learned that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they are strong, not because they are smart, but because they are kind. They help others. They build alliances based on trust rather than fear. They fight for causes larger than themselves. And when they are pushed too far, they push back with everything they have." Vila closed her eyes. Her head was pounding. Everything she had believed about the galaxy was crumbling around her. "Contact the humans," she said finally. "Tell them I want to talk. Tell them I am willing to negotiate." "Bode, yes, Your Majesty." "And?" "Yes. Tell them I am sorry." The old advisor nodded and left the room. Vila stood alone in the great throne room, surrounded by the bones of her ancestors. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. The empire was falling, but perhaps if she was lucky, something could still be saved. She just had to hope that the humans were as merciful as believed. The message from the Empire arrived on Earth like a thunderclap. The Empress wanted to negotiate. She was asking for peace. The council met in emergency session. 12 leaders sat around the round table, their faces showing a mix of surprise and suspicion. "It could be a trap," said Li, the military leader. "She could be buying time to rebuild her forces." "Possible," agreed Council Leader Park. "But our intelligence suggests the rebellion is real. Her empire is truly falling apart. She may have no choice but to seek peace." "Even if she is sincere, why should we help her? They have caused suffering across the galaxy. Let them fall." "Because chaos benefits no one." Park looked around the table. "If the Empire collapses completely, there will be a power vacuum. Dozens of species will fight for control. The war could spread and continue for centuries. Then we control the collapse, we manage it." "How? We are not conquerors, we are not rulers, we are humans. We build partnerships, not empires." Park paused. "I believe we should hear what the Empress has to say. We can always refuse her offer if it is not acceptable." The council debated for hours. In the end, they voted to send a delegation. They would listen to the Empress. They would consider her words, and they would decide what kind of future they wanted to build. They chose Han to lead the delegation. When he heard the news, Han felt something twist in his stomach. Return to face the Empress again. He had spent months trying to forget her cold smile and silver eyes. Now he had to see them again. But he was a soldier. He followed orders. So he boarded a shuttle and flew back across the stars. The journey felt shorter this time. Maybe because he knew what waited at the end. Or maybe because part of him was looking forward to it. He wanted to see the Empress again. He wanted to see what 3 months of defeat had done to her pride. The look different when he arrived. The great city still stood, but it seemed dimmer somehow. Fewer ships flew between the towers. Many buildings were dark. The Empire was wounded, and it showed. Han walked through the same hallways he had walked before. This time, there were no laughing nobles. The corridors were quiet and empty. Guards watched him with tired eyes but did not speak. The throne room was smaller than he remembered. Or maybe it just felt smaller because so many seats were empty. Only a few nobles remained. They sat in silence, their proud faces now showing fear and uncertainty. And there on the throne of bones sat Empress Vila. She had changed. Her white hair was still long and beautiful. Her silver eyes were still large and bright. But something in her face was different. The arrogance was gone. The cruel amusement was gone. In their place was something Han had not expected. Sadness. Han walked forward. He stopped at the same place he had stopped before, 30 feet from the throne. This time he did not bow. He simply stood and waited. Vila looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "You came back. You asked me to come. I did not think you would. I thought you would want to watch from afar while my empire burned." Han shook his head. "That is not the human way." "No, it seems there are many things about humans that I did not understand." Vila stood up slowly. She walked down the steps from her throne until she stood only a few feet from Han. They were almost the same height now. "I owe you an apology." Han said nothing. He waited. "When you came here 3 months ago, I mocked you. I called you weak. I said humans were not worthy of respect. I was wrong." Vila's voice was steady, but Han could see the effort it took. "You are not weak. You are the strongest species I have ever met, not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of your hearts." "Our hearts?" "You showed kindness to those who had no reason to expect it. You offered hope to species that had been hopeless for centuries. You built an alliance based on trust rather than fear. I have ruled for years, and I never understood that such a thing was possible." Han was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want, Your Majesty?" "Peace." The word came out like a prayer. "I want peace for my people, for your people, for everyone." "Peace has a price." "I know." Vila turned and walked back to her throne, but she did not sit down. She stood beside it, one hand resting on the arm made of bone. "I am prepared to pay. Tell me your terms." Han reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He activated it, and a holographic document appeared in the air between them. "These are the terms agreed upon by the Human Council and our allies," he said. "First, all forces will withdraw from the outer colonies. The species living there will be allowed to choose their own governments." Vila nodded slowly, agreed. "Second, all slaves will be freed immediately. They will provide compensation to those they have wronged. That will bankrupt many noble families." "I am aware." Vila hesitated, then nodded again, agreed. "Third, they will share their technology with the rest of the galaxy. No more hoarding knowledge. No more keeping others weak. You ask us to give up our greatest advantage. I ask you to join the galactic community as equals, not masters." Vila closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet with tears she refused to let fall. "Agreed." "Fourth and final, there will be a new galactic council. All species will have a voice. They will have one vote, the same as everyone else. No more empire, no more conquest, just cooperation." This was the hardest demand of all. Han knew it. They had ruled for 10,000 years. Asking them to become equals with species they had once enslaved was asking them to give up everything they believed about themselves. Vila was silent for a long time. The remaining nobles watched her with fearful eyes. They were waiting to see what kind of leader she really was. Finally, Vila spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My ancestors built this empire through blood and fire. They believed that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. I was raised to believe the same thing. It is the only truth I have ever known." She paused. Han waited. "But perhaps it was never the truth at all. Perhaps it was just a story we told ourselves to justify what we did. The real truth is simpler. Everyone wants to be free. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to matter." She looked at Han with those silver eyes. "You understood that. We never did." She took a deep breath. "I accept your terms, all of them. The empire is ended. We will begin again as equals." Han felt something release in his chest. He had not realized how tense he was until that moment. He nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Do not call me that. I am not an Empress anymore. I am just Vila." "Vila then." Han allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you, Vila." The young woman who had once ruled the stars smiled back. It was not the cold smile of before. It was something warmer, something almost human. "Thank you, Han, for giving us a second chance we did not deserve." Han turned to leave. He had taken only a few steps when Vila spoke again. "Wait, I have a question." He turned back. "Yes." 3 months ago, when I mocked you and sent you away, you did not fight back. You did not argue, you just left. Why?" Han thought about it. He remembered the anger he had felt, the desire to shout, to fight, to prove he was not weak. He remembered pushing all of that down and walking away with his head high. "Because," he said slowly, "the best way to deal with someone who underestimates you is to let them keep underestimating you, until the moment when it matters." Vila nodded, and that moment was now. "Yes." "You planned this. From the very beginning, you planned this. Not me personally, but humanity has learned some things in our short time among the stars. We have learned that pride is weakness. We have learned that patience is strength. And we have learned that the best victory is one where everyone wins." He bowed then, a proper bow, respectful and correct, just as he had bowed 3 months ago. "Goodbye, Vila. May your new path bring you peace." He walked out of the throne room. This time no one laughed, no one threw anything. The nobles simply watched him go in silence. Vila watched too. She watched until he disappeared through the great doors. Then she sat down on her throne for the last time and let the tears finally fall. Outside, Han walked through the quiet streets of the alien city. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was a new day, a new beginning. He thought about everything that had happened. The mockery, the quiet departure, the alliance, the war, and now the peace. Humans had been in space for only 200 years. They were young and small compared to the ancient empires around them, but they had something the old empires did not. They had hope, they had kindness, they had the ability to see enemies as potential friends. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Han reached his shuttle and climbed inside. He set a course for Earth, for home. Behind him, the grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. The galaxy was changing. An age of empires was ending. An age of cooperation was beginning. And it had all started with a simple soldier who had refused to let mockery break him. Han smiled and flew toward the dawn.